Welcome to ISMS. It's an absolute delight and pleasure for us to welcome all of you. We are proud that you have chosen us, and it is an absolute delight for us to take you forward in this session. So in this program, we have planned about 15, 16 sessions for all of you. Primarily, these are in the area of communication, because we feel at ISMS, we feel as much as your education, your academics are important, no question about it. But we also feel that your ability to communicate with the world is also very, very important. Because we have realized over the years that success is a combination of several things. It's not just only academics that makes you successful. Academics is a very, very essential element. But apart from academics, there are many other things which combine together to make you successful. And one of them is communication. Let me share with you today a story, which is an absolute real life story of two brothers who had their own individual brilliances, but I would like to share with you how one of them went on to become much bigger than the other one. Let me tell you the story. This is an absolute real life story. And I know both these brothers very well because the younger brother is a very dear friend of mine. So this friend of mine, we went to school and college together. We grew up together. And he wanted to be an engineer. So he wanted to get in an engineering college. And this was about 26, 27, maybe 28 years ago, approximately. So he wanted to get into engineering college. But when he started writing examinations, he couldn't get to the best colleges. You know, those days, the best colleges, of course, were the IITs, and he could not get into the IITs, which he wanted to do, but he couldn't get in. So he went to, those days it used to be called REC in Agartala in Tripura, and he graduated with electrical engineering in graduate. Okay, so, and he went on to start his career, and he moved on to his career. But he always had a regret that he could not join IIT, because he had an elder brother who was an IITian. Not only that, he was so brilliant that he had gone to IIT Kharagpur, and in Kharagpur during his BTech program, he stood first. Yes, you heard me right. And then subsequently, he did his MTech, and he also went on to start his career. Today, after 28 years, if I go back to see how much they've been able to achieve in their lives, I mean, in terms of, when I say achievement here, I'm talking about career enhancement. I'm talking about achieving big in their careers. I see that the older brother who went to IIT, who did his MTech also, has done well in life. He's a delivery manager with Wipro. I think he's retiring sometime this year. But the younger brother, who just went to REC and graduated in electrical engineering, went on to become one of the partners in a company called Accenture. Right? Yes, you heard it right, one of the partners. Now, if you really go back and study them, academically, the elder brother was way ahead than the younger brother. But from a career perspective, the younger brother is way ahead of the elder brother. And since I know them, I can tell you one of the most important reasons is their abilities to communicate. So communication is a very, very important element in the success of anybody in their careers. Because no matter how well educated you could be, no matter how good you are academically, if you are not able to converse, communicate with people, the impact will not be as very high. Okay. So welcome to this session, all of you. And in this session, I'm going to run this session along with my colleague Sunita. Sorry, the name is not right there. Unfortunately, the name is Sunita. So what I want to tell you is I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to ask you, and make a comparison of how we human beings are different from these animal species that you see on the screen. The biggest difference between man and all other animal species is what? Many people will say it is our ability to work with our hands. The monkey can also work with his hands. Then what is the difference? Why has other animal species not done as well as mankind has? What could be the reason? If you go deeper, you will understand there are two things. One is man's ability to think. Man's ability to think. Do animals think? I don't know. We don't have too much information whether animals think or not. Man's ability to think and man's ability to communicate. And that's what makes a very, very big difference. So would like to welcome you, me and my colleague Sunita. Sunita is also part of this class right now, and she's listening to all our discussions today that are going to happen. And next Monday onwards, she's going to take over and she's going to come and share the other sessions with all of you. Time to time, I'm also going to come back and I'm also going to work with you to try and see how we can get you to a level of communication where success will be much, much more easier for you to achieve. So coming to communication, let me share with you, this is what you see on the screen is a typical process of communication. Very typical process of communication. In communication, you have a sender who is sending a message through a medium for the receiver to receive and comprehend. Now, very important in communication is the word comprehend. So sender is sending a message through a medium, expecting the receiver will receive and comprehend what the sender has sent. Then one process of communication is over. Clear? Now, let's talk about the medium. Sender now can send the message through different mediums. For example, right now, I'm trying to send my message to you over a virtual platform through a platform called Zoom. But it's the same thing. I am the sender of the message and I'm using a medium, which is a virtual medium, to send this message across to you, hoping that you will receive it and you will comprehend it. Isn't that so? That's how all communication is in a one-way process. Our classes are also a one-way process where I'm going to be interacting with you. I'm going to share with you my thoughts, my ideas, along with my colleague Sunita. So I am the sender of the message and I'm sending it through this medium, hoping that you as a receiver will receive it and comprehend it. Now, imagine there was no pandemic. If this pandemic was not there, where would we have been? We would have been sitting in a classroom, interacting with each other, and therefore the medium would have been face to face rather than this virtual Zoom medium that we are using today. Isn't it? Hopefully, pandemic will also get over, and hopefully we will see each other in classroom very, very soon, so that we can also cut out on this virtual medium and go face to face as senders and receivers of these messages. Please remember, this is how all communication across the world is happening. Also remember, today's world is a digital world. I'm sure all of you understand digital, and I think you're all embracing digital as well. So in this digital world, really, it doesn't matter. Today, we have organizations or businesses which work anywhere in the world, right? Just to give you an example, we have a company called Uber, right? I'm sure many of you know Uber. You might have also used Uber. So Uber is a company not present in India, but they run their business in India. So which means we have what we call boundaryless organizations today. So no matter today, whether there is a pandemic or not, there's a fair amount of business which is also happening online. and also through a phone. So communication, therefore, is the exchange of messages through different mediums between senders and receivers. Are we clear? There can be many examples from that. And to do this, what we require is we require channels. How do we communicate? We communicate through some different communication channels. Let's look at and understand what are these channels. Various channels, isn't it today? The mediums are various. Today, you are not, or any company or any employee of an organization also is not communicating in one method only. When you get to work tomorrow, in the next couple of years, you're going to be ready, and I'm sure you're going to be placed in great institutions. And when you start working, you will realize that you are communicating a lot with your customers, you are communicating with your stakeholders, you are communicating with your bosses, your colleagues, your peers, and all this communication is happening through different channels that you will be using. And all these channels are important to be looked at and understood. Today, of course, we are using a one-way video method to reach out to you and express our thoughts and ideas to you. Important to understand is ineffective communication happens also when communication is not able to achieve its objective. That is called ineffective communication. And this ineffective communication happens because there are barriers. Now, these barriers can act as stumbling blocks or act as impediments, which is not allowing communication to reach its objective. As I said, what is the objective of any communication? Objective of communication is for the sender of the message to get comprehension by the receiver. Now, if for any reason the right comprehension is not happening, that means communication is extremely ineffective. So what we're going to do today is we are going to try and look at these barriers, and we'll try to understand what are some of the barriers to communication, and is there some way, some method for us to overcome these barriers. All right, that's all we are going to do today. Subsequently, in next classes, we will come back and look at other stuff as well. Okay, so here are the communication barriers that I want you to understand. Somehow in this particular thing, we have 6 of them. 6 of them is right because perception barriers, if you see, are written twice. One, the first is the perception barrier of the sender of the message, and the second is perception barrier of the receiver of the message. Okay, so that's why, as you see, it is mentioned twice. But then there are these 6 very important barriers to communication. So what I want to do today is I want you to understand these barriers. And it is not necessary that I'm going to talk about solutions to overcome all barriers. I will talk about it a little bit, but subsequently in other sessions, we will come and talk about more solutions. But today, let's identify what are the barriers. So the first barrier is language. Now, whether you are communicating by voice, as what I'm trying to do today, whether you are trying to communicate in writing, language comes as a medium that you are using to reach out and help your receiver understand what you are wanting to communicate, right? Because language is a medium. Now, if there is a language barrier, obviously people will not be able to understand. No, understand. Now, everybody knows this. But then you know where the problem is? The problem is that within the geographies of our operation, we have many languages. Let us look at our country. In a country like ours in India, How many languages do we have? I'm sure some of you will say in the fifth schedule of the Constitution, there are 15 languages which were recognized initially. Now that number of languages has gone up to 29 or 30. You are right if you say that. But tell me, is that the number of languages that we have in this country? The answer is no. We are nowhere near it. In our country, let me tell you today, we have more than 1,500 languages. Yes, you heard it right. More than 1,500. Now, so what it essentially means, it is not just language, but the language, it is also the dialects. For example, Hindi, which is say the Rashtra Bhasha or the national language, the way Hindi is spoken in Delhi is completely different to the way it is spoken in Mumbai. And it's completely different, say, the way it is spoken in UP, in Lucknow, or in Allahabad, or in Patna, or in Bhopal, or in Jaipur, or in Hyderabad, or in many other parts of the country. As a result, what happens? It creates barriers in understanding. Right? Now, it is not just Hindi. Hindi is just one example I'm giving you. We have so many other languages, and different languages have different types of ways of speaking. So therefore, the barriers are huge. Huge. Let me tell you, all of you today, assure you that, me having been able to speak 8 Indian languages, I still have problems in many parts of the country. Because certain words, certain things are spoken about differently, and that makes it very, very difficult to understand. So it is therefore a very, very, what can I say, practical barrier which comes in between, senders and receivers of message to create understanding amongst themselves. All right. Just to give you an example, let me tell you the story. All right. Okay. This was once in Pune, and you are going to be in Pune very soon, where as these lockdowns end and situation becomes a little normal when you come to our beautiful campus. This was in Pune, and I had a friend, and I was invited to his house to have lunch. So he was a Maharashtrian gentleman. Shirsagar is his name. Very, very dear friend of mine. And his wife, Madhulika. I was invited to their home for lunch, and we had a good lunch, good Maharashtrian lunch. And after lunch, my friend asked me, Acha, Abhijit, after lunch, will you like some fruit? Some fruits? I said, okay, fruits mean, in Hindi it's called phal. Some phal? Which fruit? What fruit? He said, sitafal. I said, sitafal? Now, those days I used to live in Delhi. And in Delhi, sitafal is referred to the red pumpkin. The red pumpkin is called a sitafal. So he said, sitafal. So my language, look how language barrier is happening. I said, oh my God, it's a red pumpkin. The red pumpkin is a vegetable. How can you eat it like a fruit? So I told him, no, thank you, boss. I don't need a sitafal. He said, no, they're very good. It's come from Nashik. I said, boss, wherever it's come from, I don't think I'm comfortable with the sitafal. He said, all right. But finally, when his wife brought the sitafal, I saw it was not a sitafal, it was a custard apple, what in English we call a custard apple. A custard apple in Delhi during those days, I remember it used to be called a sharifa. See how language has created a barrier in the communication. I'll give you a funny one, very funny one. And this is from a hotel. I have also worked in a hotel, and I tell you, this is a story from the Claridge's hotel in Delhi. So what happened once, there was this guy who was a Sikh, Sardarji, a Sikh Punjabi person, and he was manning the room service phones in the night. Right? It was night time, and a customer who was in the room called room service. Room service you call to order some food, and apparently this gentleman was from the eastern part of the country, and he wanted, so he called and said, "Excuse me, room service." The guy said, "Yes, room service. Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" He said, "Can I get some card?" He said, "Sir, card? Sir, we don't have card." He said, "No, no, you don't understand me. I need some card." He said, "Sir, we don't play cards here, sir." So, so what he understood as was playing cards, because that's what the person said, "I want some card." But what the customer actually meant was some, I'm sure you've got it, huh? It was curd, which is dahi. Right. And apparently later on it was found out that the customer had a stomach upset, and he wanted to eat some curd because he thought if he eats some curd, he will feel that his stomach will settle down and he will feel comfortable. So he was asking for a bowl of yogurt or curd or dahi, but he said it in such a way that it sounded as if it was playing cards that he was asking for. So you see, the examples that I've given you kind of tell us that languages can be a huge barrier. Now, the question is, how do you overcome this barrier? The only way to overcome this barrier is to clarify by asking questions. So you could have clarified, the guy could have clarified and asked, "Sir, do you mean playing cards, the one you play games with?" The person would have said, "No, no, not at all. I mean the one which you eat." So then he would have thought, what is the card that you eat? Then probably he would have understood, right? So language barriers are very common, and it will be very common as you grow up and you move across the country and you work in different geographies. You will come across these language barriers, and the best thing to do is to ask clarifying questions to clarify and see that whether what you are understanding is exactly what the other person is saying. Clear, everybody?